As a kid, what did you think was a very normal thing to do, which it really wasn't? Having a path through the house surrounded by boxes and junk stacked to the ceiling. I grew up in a hoarder house. Occasionally us kids would run too fast through the path, knocking into the sides, and the boxes and stuff would collapse on top of us. I smiled with my lips on the inside of my mouth. I don't know how I managed to not learn how to smile properly. But I thought I was smiling normally until a kid said stop smiling like that. When you went to the sitter every day, you were to sit on the couch and never move. Seriously. My brothers, sister and I were forced to sit on the couch with the TV on at the sitter's house, while her kids ran around like a bunch of hellions. When we got a new sitter after moving, all 4 of us promptly sat on the couch and stayed there. Our new sitter pulled a bunch of toys out and sat in the floor and played with us. Not telling your family when or where you were going or what you were up to or how long you would be gone. I remember as early as 6 I was wandering off to another neighborhood and across a busy road to find playmates. As I got older, I would go to friends' houses for days on end, still never needing to check with anyone or let anyone know at home I was going. It didn't really click until I got my first roommate after college who bugged out and was about to call the cops because I went to my boyfriend's house, turned my phone off and took a long nap in the middle of the day as he worked nights. We had an argument where I kept saying I'm an adult. You don't need to keep track of me, and it took a while for me to understand that even adults check in with each other for safety and they don't normally just disappear for a few days. Wash my 2 pairs of pants and 2 sweaters every few days, because they were the only clothes my parent had bought me for school. Eating canned button mushrooms for lunch because there was nothing else to eat in the house. Not for a lack of parental funds. Didn't realize other kids didn't live like this until I hit 13ish. Biting my washcloth in the bath. Having camping nights. Mum would light candles and make dinner with camping gear. She and I would play games until my bedtime, huddled up in the living room. It was because she was crazy poor when she divorced my dad, and a few times she couldn't pay the electricity on time. I thought it was fun. If you haven't, you should tell her. When our kids were young, we rented a house in a more posh neighborhood to be close to my husband's job. And it was impossible to keep up with the Joneses. We just didn't have the money. But I did things like reading Little House on the Prairie by oil lamplight, or turning our already very sparsely furnished house into a haunted house for my son's birthday party. My daughter told me recently that she adored the lamplight readings, and the cool rich classmates said it was the best birthday party they'd been to. It meant a lot to this mom, who wanted to give her kids the world but couldn't afford it. Edited because rambunctious puppies caused a post before I was finished. I was trained by my father to believe that a proper salami sandwich has 15-20 pieces of salami on it. Imagine my aunt's horror when I did that at her house, while she was putting 4-5 pieces on the sandwiches she was making for my cousins. The story lives on till this day. Like 30 years later, no regrets. Opposite but. I had a neighbor who had extremely, and I mean extremely, strict parents. We were invited to a sleepover of about 5 or 6 girls at one of the other neighbor kids' place, and she was shocked to see that we had candy and popcorn and soda pop to eat at our disposal after 6 p.m. She had no idea. To us, it was normal sleepover snacks, but to her it was like looking at Willy Wonka himself. Crazy. Whispering what I just said back to myself. Apparently I did it all the time as a kid and never noticed until a couple of friends pointed it out to me. I would be like, let's play Barbies, and then quietly let's play Barbies. I have no idea what that was about. Edited to add. Thank you for the silver. Collecting roadkill and utilizing insects to clean the bones so I could collect them. Jeff Dahmer over here. Sleeping in the display beds at the furniture store. My parents are divorced, and when we were little we'd go week to week at each parent's house. Well, my dad worked at Montgomery Ward's and opened the store maybe 3 days a week. That meant he had to be there at 5 a.m. During his weeks, he'd stuff us in the car in our jammies, and drive us up to monkey wards as he called it. Then we'd all get snug in our own display beds and sleep for another hour and a half. Once some other employees showed up and it got closer to school hours, he'd get us dressed in the dressing rooms and drive us to school. He really did love us and tried hard for us. Have speed up spells where it feels like I just got off a treadmill and my internal monologue is yelling. Turns out I have epilepsy and was having seizures. Didn't realize back when I was like 7. But presented with tonic-clonics, grand mal, at 15. Or listen to the air vent and hear music and white noise. This was likely auditory hallucinations. Also due to epilepsy. Stupid brain. My family are not comfortable around each other. Never any touching, kissing or cuddling. Any physical contact is forced and horribly awkward. No one also talks and any disagreements simmer for years with a grudging resentment. When I first started dating my now husband, I was shocked his family would just sit close to each other. Like their legs would touch on the couch. Like not overly touchy. Just normal. But not normal to me. They also spoke to each other if they were upset. I was quite envious. Trusting everything people say to me. Apparently when I was a kid I used to pick up quarters on the street. My parents didn't want me doing that, so my dad told me to not pick up coins. Because people put them in their butts. I didn't use change for anything until I started driving at 16. Sitting together at the table for meals, especially dinner. We frequently got McDonald's. Had TV dinners. Or had ramen mac and cheese. I didn't know until I was an older teen that families actually sat down to talk to each other every day because I thought that only happened in shows and movies. Sitting down at the table makes me uncomfortable. Even to this day. Like, I don't even know how to prep the table. Jesus. I was going to say cutting pickle spears into little triangles to eat alongside your sandwich. This thread went in a way different direction. Building homes for snails and slugs when it rained. My older brother and I would love to go outside when it rained and collect slugs and snails to put in these little pebble shelters we'd make for them in the backyard. Edit. Wow, as a non-social kid hopping between houses I never knew how common this was. Thanks for the awards. Using corn bags. They're cotton squares or rounds filled with dried corn. You put them in the microwave for a heating pad in the freezer for an ice pack. I still use and make them. I just didn't realize nobody else used them until like high school mayo. Edit. I'm loving all the different variations people have of this. I'm glad I'm not alone. My parents have what we now know as developmental disorders but was previously known as being slow. Think it was 2nd grade when I started doing math for my parents. We went out for shopping or dinner. Then I check the grocery receipt or tally the tip. In more ways than one I became very independent from my parents at a young age. I didn't realize until late high school, interacting with my boyfriend's family, that normal children don't speak to their parents like equals. It was awkward to say the least. It took many years to learn how to be respectful to your elders and not throw my weight around. I had thought every kid needed to keep their parents in line. Awkward. Edit. Just wanted to say thank you to the people who posted questions. This thread in general has hit me in the feels. Didn't realize it would be so cathartic to read and talk about childhood differences. On a lighter note, I thought everyone dipped their McDonald's fries into their shakes. McNuggets too. Full stop. Full stop. Cracking open cans of beer and pouring them into styrofoam cups. So my parents could drink while they drove the car. Shoveling food into your face as quickly as possible while huddled around the TV. It wasn't until a sleepover at a friend's house that I encountered a family sitting around a dinner table talking about their day. At the time it made me super uncomfortable, but I've learned to slow down and appreciate it more with time. I remember in year 8 in school we watched a video about mental health. One of the kids said that at a low point he considered suicide. I didn't think that was a big deal, because I thought about killing myself almost every day. I thought it was normal and everybody did it. It's been nearly 10 years since my attempt. And it still boggles my mind that there are people who don't think that every day. Dying. Over the period of about a year when I was 9-10 years old, 4 different people on the street I lived on died unnatural deaths. The old lady next door electrocuted herself trimming the hedges. One of the neighbor kids I played with accidentally shot himself playing with his father's gun in front of his sister. Another playmate's father was a cop and was shot and killed in the line of duty, and a 16-year-old girl was uphead and murdered in her own house. Never solved. Even though everybody knew who did it. I also had a cousin I was close to dying in a car accident. But he didn't live on the same street. So with all that, I just assumed that was a normal rate of death. So naturally, I assumed that I was going to die at some point in the near future. Took a few years to get over that. I grew up on a farm outside a small town. Didn't realize until I started going to school that running around naked outside often, playing with hatchets and pocket knives, or breaking off pieces of salt lick to suck on, were not normal things. My parents fostered 2 young girls very close to my age. The things they expected from my parents thought were normal were so sad. The eldest tried to undress for my dad. He was mortified. They thought they would get in trouble for using soap in the bath. They asked permission to get drinks of water and to go to the bathroom. They were amazed we weren't locked in our rooms at night. Amazed I had my own room and they had theirs. They didn't know what bed frames were. My parents sleeping in separate rooms. My mom snores like crazy and I understood why my dad would hate that. Turns out, I dated a girl whose parents were happily married but lived in 2 separate homes. In the same town. In the same neighborhood. Less than a mile from each other. Both homes were in each other's names and all of their finances were interwoven. They just found that for their relationship it was better to live apart. When we were all together they seemed very happy. And would sleep over at each other's homes. It was like they were a happy dating couple who just hadn't moved in together. Being forced to eat way more than what I could. Until my stomach would hurt for hours. Not traumatizing like other stuff in this post. Just something I don't miss. On a lighter note. Walking in stealth mode throughout the whole house all the time because I wanted to be like Pocahontas when she spies on John Smith. Talking to your parents and them being affectionate. What do you mean you play board games together and no one yells? You willingly sit down and spend time together? Dated a girl and the first time I met them, her mom hugged me. Weirded me out plenty. She just sits around the living room doing her own thing while her parents may also be there. Who even does that? Turns out, a lot of people. Edit. I am a lot better now. I'm an adult with a okay relationship with my mom and brother. I have a great relationship with my sister. Just know it gets better and you'll get there. My dad would put chocolate frosting on a graham cracker. Kinda like a s'more but no marshmallow. And it would be a treat for us for a few days. Like cookies. I think it's BC there were times we couldn't afford cookies or brownies for lunch but we usually had graham crackers and frosting so he made sure we had something sweet for our lunches. Edit. Wow, I went to sleep and this blew up LMAO. Thank you all for the upvotes. Awards. And the stories of your own. And for those that have never tried it. Shoot a gun inside the house. I grew up poor. My dad owned a single wide trailer on an acre of land. We live in Oregon. And when it got cold, he would set up a couple phonobooks at the end of the hallway and do some target practice. I remember having to be behind him in the living room. Definitely my favorite white trash childhood memory. We're Jewish. My family used to play Would They Hide Us? A fun dinner time conversation game where we suggest families we're friends with and figure out whether they would be willing and capable of hiding us should the Nazis ever take over America. I thought everyone did that. Bug bite oil. Every night before bed, my parents would slather me in body oil because they said it kept bugs from biting me. As an adult, I realized it was just having skin so soft body oil to help with my dry, itchy skin. I was a finicky kid and didn't like the oils and lotions. I thought everyone got beat by their father, so I disliked men who had kids because they probably beat their children too. To be completely silent in the house. No loud noise. Limited conversation. Light feet, etc. I moved into my boyfriend's after college for a brief period and was shocked how much they talked to each other. Did things together. Moved in their home. Received clothes from the church. When I was about 6 years old, Santa and his elf came to my house and gave us presents. I did not realize they were church people helping out the poor family until I was a teenager. Having my mom wipe myself. Smoking at the age of 9/10. I mean, I had no idea until I was probably in my late teens that it just wasn't normal for a kid to steal smokes from their parents' older siblings and start smoking at the age of 9 or 10. Some of the kids in my neighborhood, including myself, because I was dumb, even took to buying bubble tape, which at the time came in a round canister, and shoving it in their back pocket to make it look like they had a can of Copenhagen, because a lot of my friends' dads dipped as well as smoked. I thought everyone twitched uncontrollably when the sunlight shined through the trees in the morning on the way to school, or strobe lights. Not till 14, when I had my first grand mal seizure and went to the hospital, that I thought it was normal to have older boys finding me attractive from the age of 8 to 13. Unbeknownst to me, I was sexually assaulted and abused without also realizing this doesn't happen to every girl until I was 19. And no, it isn't normal for anyone's mom to be drunk 5 out of the 7 days a week, or to be taken to the bar when mom couldn't find a babysitter. Throw up pot. As a kid, whenever we were sick with the flu and thought we might throw up, we would carry around a kitchen pot with us. Sleep with it by our bed, or if we were on the couch lounging, would have it there. Just in case we didn't think we could make it to the bathroom. Always a pot. Never a trash can or bucket. Fast forward 20 some years and my girlfriend and one of her friends and I all go out and get hammered with a capital H. We all get back to my apartment and everyone is finding places to crash, and I go into host mode thinking I am such a good host, handing them kitchen pots to sleep with. Like a lunatic. Needless to say, they looked at me like I was also high in addition to being drunk. As a child, my anxiety was so bad that I would become physically sick almost every single day. My mother told me it was because I was anxious, but never took me to a doctor or psychiatrist to resolve the problem. I thought it was normal to vomit at least twice a day. Later, when I told people this, they were extremely alarmed. I was shocked to discover people sometimes go years without vomiting. Having a birthday spanking machine in elementary school. The whole class would stand in a line with their legs spread apart. This is already sounding bad as I type it. Comma. And then the birthday boy girl would crawl through the other kids' legs while those kids would playfully spank them as they passed. Just last month I was joking to people how weird that was. My friends said they never heard of that. Nor did my older brother, who went to the same school. When I was about 14, I wrote a short story where the main character was a grown man with an office job, and in the first couple of pages, as he's getting ready for work, he puts on clear nail polish. Everyone who read it thought he was so hilarious and quirky. I thought all professional grown-ups wore nail polish, but only women wore the color kind. Peeing outside. Not on the toilet. Saw my stepdad do it, so I did it at school. Apparently it wasn't normal to do it on the daycare playground. The whole class came to watch. I was brought to a restroom to finish up, but I was already done. 1. Swear at my parents. I said every word in the book and barely face punishment. Thai parents. No doubt. I always just assumed it was the norm. 2. Hating most of your family. Most of my family never got along, and there was a very open policy to call that cousin, uncle, brother a horrible person and all that fun stuff. Just kind of assumed that was the norm. It wasn't until I met my, now, wife in high school what a real family was. The first few years being together, I absolutely hated going to any of her family parties. I'd always complain to her and say things like, why are we having a birthday party for your 18-year-old cousin? That's so dumb. Eventually I realized it was just an excuse for all the family to get together, since they actually enjoyed each other's company. 14 years later and I now look forward to each and every family gathering. A whole lot of things. Being beat for very minor mistakes. Didn't help that my friends had their own stories of being beat, although it was for more typical, of our parents' culture, reasons. Sitting at the table together but not talking amongst each other. We were actually punished, usually smacked or yelled at, if we dared to talk while we ate. We also weren't allowed to have the TV on, so we had to eat in silence. Being a slave to my brother, which included being used as a human stool if he needed to reach something. He's older and was heavier than me. And yes, he did literally use the word slave. My brother convinced me that I had come from a cereal box as the prize until I was about 8. I was scared of my friends' dads. Anytime I was round a friend's house and their dad was around, I'd get really nervous. Turns out my dad being a piece of wasn't a dad tray. It was a him tray. Edit. Thanks the upvotes. And thank you to the kind stranger who gave me silver. Finding dead lizards and having a burial for them so they could go to heaven and singing them a song. Double dipping. I grew up with 4 siblings, so we all shared food all the time. If there was a sauce or condiments to dip in, we all used the same bowl and constantly double dipped. I didn't realize it's not normal until I did it with friends in my 20s and they were really grossed out. I personally think you can if you don't dip in the side you bit off. Sometimes when I eat bread too fast it comes out my nose. What? Teenagers dying young, high school etc. By the time I was 20, I lost 2 best friends. Up to 9 casual friends who all died. My very best friend got cancer. He's still alive and very healthy at age 28. And our other friend got the exact same type of cancer. And they lived together for 2 years. He's not doing the greatest himself. Also, injuries: breaking bones. I have had 19 broken bones, 7 surgeries, and my body has metal from my skull, eye, shoulders, arms, wrists and hands. My life has been pretty wild. Lastly, I thought it was normal to get my ass beat by my dad. I learned quickly that wasn't the case when I met the mother of my child and started going to counseling. I should have listened to my mother all those years, but it's true that one develops sympathetic love for their abuser. Maybe not where you're going with this, but I was in my 20s when I learned most people don't serve European stews, Irish, beef bourguignon, goulash, etc. over rice. My family always had anything saucy over rice. And it never occurred to me that was wrong until some guy I went to college with laughed and called me provincial for doing it. Our Christmas traditions. After dinner, we always gathered around my uncle's baby grand piano and sang Christmas carols. Just like in the movies. I never realized until I was much older that most families don't do that. All the kids then dressed up and performed a live nativity scene as my aunt read from the Bible. After that, my aunt brought out a birthday cake. My uncle played the piano while everyone sang happy birthday to Jesus. Then we were allowed to open presents. I thought everyone was hit until one day our teacher had everyone raise their hands whose parents hit them and I was the only one. Our teacher had everyone raise their hands whose parents hit them. What? Built graveyards for dead birds I collected in my wagon. I made the graveyards in my neighbor's rock garden. I was 4 years old and my parents took me to a psychiatrist because of it. I was the only kid in my grade, from 2nd to 7th grade, in a public school. I knew from TV and movies that this wasn't the norm, but I didn't grow up knowing it was anywhere as rare as it was. I'm gonna need more of an explanation. Traveling back and forth to Mexico weekly even though it was hours of riding a bus. I was told things are cheaper so that's why we go cause we were poor. I remember visiting houses with lots of people crammed sitting on the floor with makeshift beds on the bare floor and very specifically a single box of Wheaties on the dirty fridge. Other times we would go to the middle of nowhere. A tiny house with nothing but a single window in each wall and a bucket in the corner. I was told to be quiet and not come out. My mother later confessed to me as an adult that her and my stepdad were smuggling drugs across the border.